By the time he walked back into the corner store with a brown paper bag, 3 lives had changed, his daughter's, and the cashier's whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. If you've ever wondered whether a single, awkward question can tilt a day back toward hope, stay with me. Because this didn't start like a rescue. It started like a checkout line on a quiet Tuesday, with a dad counting coins, a kid asking for gum, and a young woman trying not to let her trembling fingers tell the truth. The bell above the glass door gave a tired jingle as Adam nudged it open with his shoulder. He had one hand on a basket and the other ruffling the hair of his 8-year-old daughter, Mina, whose backpack straps were practically welded to her shoulders after a long school day. The store hummed with the soft drone of a refrigerator unit, the smell of dust and citrus cleaner blending with the sweetness from the pastry case. It was the kind of corner store that seemed to have been there forever. Posters taped to windows, a corkboard with sun-faded flyers, a radio whispering songs from a decade ago. "Dad, can we get the bubble gum with the stickers?" Mina asked, hopping in place, either from sugar she didn't have yet or a talent for enthusiasm she had inherited from her mother, the kind that made even Tuesday feel like a holiday. Adam smiled. He had a policy, one small treat on long days. It wasn't much, but it was a ritual they could afford, a bright bead on a string of gray afternoons. "Go pick one," he said. "The one that won't make our dentist hate me." Mina darted away. Adam dropped pasta, a jar of sauce, a small bag of apples, and a loaf of bread into the basket. He tried to ignore the way his grocery list had become predictable, like a song with only 4 notes. Since the divorce 2 years ago, money had learned to live inside numbers instead of feelings. He counted even when he didn't mean to: minutes, miles, meals. At the counter, the cashier was fighting with the register tape. She had a halo of flyaway hair and the sort of face that looked younger when she smiled, older when she didn't. She moved quickly, but there was a tremor in her hands, a faint, rhythmic river under the surface. She hit the button to open the cash drawer, miskeyed, and flinched as if the register had snapped at her. "Rough day?" Adam asked, placing the basket on the counter. "Every day," she said, but softly, not like a complaint, more like a fact you say out loud so it doesn't own you. Up close, Adam could see the tremor more clearly. Her knuckles were pale, the bones like small wings trying to lift. She rang up the pasta, the sauce, the apples. The scanner beeped, steady as a metronome. When Mina returned with her prize, bubble gum with a cartoon puppy on the wrapper, the cashier took it, tried to balance it in her left palm, and dropped it. Not just once. Twice. "A broken heart can handle a morning rush," she said, and it might have been a joke, but it was also a reference letter written by the universe. On Elena's first day at the cafe, Adam and Mina sat at a corner table pretending not to stare. Elena wore an apron that said "Be kind, rewind," an old joke, new again. She poured coffee like she'd been pouring calm her whole life. At one point, a customer's hands shook as he tried to balance a muffin and his phone. Elena steadied the plate with one finger, met his eyes, and asked, softly, "Rough day?" He nodded, startled and grateful. She had learned the question and made it hers. After the rush, Elena slipped them 2 cinnamon rolls, for quality control. They tasted like Sunday mornings and resilience. "Do you ever miss the store?" Mina asked, her mouth full. "I miss the people," Elena said. "But people travel. They show up in new places wearing different name tags." Adam watched her move through the cafe. Catching small crises before they grew, noticing the way the teenager at the register flattened when a joke went wrong and buoying her back up with a look that said it's okay to learn out loud. He felt a tenderness he didn't have a quick name for, a tenderness that stretched beyond romance into something wider: respect, admiration, the gratitude that arrives when someone you care about becomes more themselves. On the wall near the cafe door, there was a corkboard with flyers: guitar lessons, room for rent, lost cat. Someone had tacked up a postcard with a quote in careful handwriting: "Be brave enough to see it. Be brave enough to ask." Adam smiled. He suspected Elena had put it there after closing, the way you leave a lighthouse listlessly blinking in case anyone needs it. That night, walking home, Mina slipped her hand into his. "Dad, can we, keep doing that?" "Doing what?" "Asking," she said. "Even when it's weird." Adam looked down at her. Streetlights sifted through the leaves, turning the sidewalk into a moving map. "Yeah," he said. "Especially when it's weird. And here's the part that binds the beginning to the end, the hook to the heart, the question Adam asked at a checkout line didn't fix Elena's life. It didn't pay bills or cure illness or make the world suddenly gentle. What it did was something quieter and, maybe, larger. It interrupted the isolation. It dared to replace polite distance with a bridge. It invited other people to the middle where we can carry things together. If you've watched this far, you know the truth the story is trying to hand you. Sometimes the hands that are shaking are holding too much alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is notice and ask. And sometimes that question is the first sturdy rung on a ladder that leads out of a very deep room. In that little cafe, in that small apartment, on that rain-bent street, ordinary people kept choosing each other. Not constantly or perfectly, just often enough to matter. And somewhere, on a Tuesday that. Mina bent to pick it up. "It's okay," she said. She had a kindness that came out before her shyness could catch it. The cashier laughed a little, embarrassed. "Thanks." Adam's chest tightened with a feeling that had no clean name, some mix of fatherhood, memory, and 1,000 unasked questions. He thought of all the times he had seen someone struggling and turned away, tethered by the polite lie that people don't want you to notice. He remembered the weeks after the divorce when his hands had trembled, too, not from cold or coffee but from the sudden free fall of not knowing who you are when you're not half of a pair. He remembered standing in a different store, trying to buy toothpaste with hands that couldn't open his wallet, and the cashier who had pretended not to notice. He remembered wishing someone would ask him the question he didn't know how to ask himself, "Are you okay?" The total flashed on the display, an amount that fit inside the corners of his thin budget. He passed his card. The machine thought about it. The radio fizzed into static and then back into a love song. The trembling in the cashier's hands grew more visible, like a shadow stepping into light. "Are you cold?" Adam asked, careful, casual. She shook her head and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "No. I'm fine." She smiled, automatic. It touched her mouth but not her eyes. Mina looked up at the cashier, then at her dad. The gum lay on the counter, that small bright promise of sugar and stickers, waiting for the next move. Adam cleared his throat. He heard his own voice before he felt brave enough to own it. "Why are your hands shaking?" It was a blunt question, the kind that can bruise or bless. For a second, the world seemed to narrow to a point, the tiny bell on the door, the hum of the fridge, Mina's breath, the trembling hands paused in midair as if surprised someone had noticed the trembling had a story. The cashier blinked. Her mouth opened and closed, a fish pulled briefly into air. She set the gum down carefully, as if it might shatter. "Because," she said, and her voice was so quiet that Adam leaned forward to hear it, "I'm timing the distance between two decisions I don't want to make." The line behind Adam had grown by two people and a patience that wouldn't last. But no one spoke. The radio found the chorus again. The neon open sign buzzed like a nervous thought. "I'm Elena," she added, as if giving her name might anchor her back to the ground. "And I'm sorry. This is unprofessional." "You don't have to be professional for me," Adam said, surprising himself with the ease of it. "I'm just a dad who can boil pasta." He gestured toward his groceries. "And apparently ask nosy questions." Something in Elena's face softened. Not a smile exactly, but less armor. She glanced at the line and then at the tiny digital clock tucked beside the cigarettes. "I have 2 minutes until my break. Would you mind stepping aside? I'll explain." She held up those shaking hands. It's worse when I'm quiet. Adam nodded and guided Mina to the end of the counter, the place where people sometimes stood to scratch lottery tickets or count change. 2 minutes arrived and elbowed the store into its next moment. The other cashier came back from stocking shelves, and Elena slipped out from behind the register as if leaving a stage where she'd forgotten her lines. They stood near the window. Outside, the light was sliding into evening. Inside, time seemed to lean in and listen. My brother called 2 hours ago, she said, voice low. Our mom collapsed this morning at her job. She's in the ER. They think it's her heart. I'm supposed to be there. But if I leave, I lose this shift, and if I lose this shift, we don't make rent. And my manager, he's not cruel, he's just numbers. The world is full of people who need this job. So I'm trying to hold the register and my mother's hand from here. She exhaled a shaky breath that sounded like it had been held all day. My hands shake when I try to hold too much. Adam felt something inside him recognize that shape of fear, the way it fills your chest without asking, the way it steals color from the world. Mina was quiet, eyes big, the gum forgotten. I'm sorry, Elena said quickly, as if apologizing for gravity. You asked, and I told you, and now you're stuck in my mess. It's okay. I'll figure it out. I always do. There was a bruise peeking from the cuff of her sleeve. Maybe a coincidence. Maybe not. Adam had learned not to write other people's stories for them, but he had also learned that pain leaves its own handwriting. You shouldn't have to figure it out alone, he said. How long until your shift ends? 3 hours, she said. Then a bus. Then the hospital. If visiting hours are over, I'll sit in the lobby and count ceiling tiles. Either way, I'll know I tried. Mina tugged at Adam's sleeve. We could drive her, she said, whispering the way children whisper when they feel wise. Adam hesitated. He had dinner to make, homework to supervise, a narrow budget and an even narrower energy reserve. But there are decisions that make themselves, not because they're easy, but because not making them would, in some important way, break who you are trying to be. Take your break now, Adam said to Elena. Tell your manager there's a family emergency. I'll talk to him if you want. I've had days like this. I know what it's like to choose between the thing that pays you and the thing that loves you. Elena's eyes filled so quickly that the tears seemed to float on the surface before they fell. She shook her head. He won't. Let me try, Adam said. The conversation with the manager wasn't cinematic. It was practical and human. Adam didn't beg. He didn't threaten. He just told the truth with a steadiness he borrowed from the way Mina leaned against his side like he was a tree. Her mom is in the hospital. She needs to go now, he said. After that afternoon, they didn't become a family overnight. Stories like that don't happen to people who still have rent due and alarms set for early shifts. But they became something human and sturdy, neighbors with keys to each other's emergencies. Elena picked up Mina from school twice when Adam's bus broke down. Adam fixed a wobbly chair at Elena's apartment with the careful patience of a person who has learned to turn small repairs into quiet victories. On Sundays, if schedules aligned, they all walked to the park with coffee and a soccer ball and talked about things that keep people alive, recipes, bus routes, books, the weirdness of being asked to be both brave and practical at the same time. One evening, months after the Tuesday that started all this, the store held a little fundraiser in the aisle by the canned soup. A jam jar for donations. A hand-lettered sign that read "Community keeps the lights on." It was for a different coworker whose landlord had hiked the rent. Adam baked brownies from a box with the nervousness of a person who has never been thanked for flour and eggs. Mina drew a poster with stars that wobbled but glowed. Elena set up the table and told customers the story of her mom getting better because she'd been given time to get to her. Someone asked me why my hands were shaking, she would say, and it sounded like the opening line of a fairy tale where compassion is the magic. Later that night, back at the apartment, Adam tucked Mina into bed. She was older now by a dozen small understandings, that buses are late and parents are tired and kindness is a skill you practice. "Dad?" she asked, staring at the ceiling like it might say the thing she was thinking. "Do you think Mom would like Elena?" The question was a kite tugging at his chest. The divorce had been civil but real. Mina's mother loved her deeply, and they worked hard to carve a schedule with no sharp edges. That love didn't erase the ache that lived between visits. It existed alongside it, a complicated piece. He never let Mina carry the heavy parts of adult knots. "I think your mom would be glad that we have people," Adam said. "I think she'd like that you're brave enough to give your stickers away." Mina grinned. "I had too." He kissed her forehead and sat on the floor outside her room until her breaths evened out. The apartment felt different when she slept, both quieter and louder, every pipe and passing car amplified by the mind's night ears. He stood, stretched, and wandered to the window. The city was a necklace of streetlights. Across the way, someone's TV flickered blue. Somewhere, another parent was doing the math of tomorrow. His phone buzzed. "Elena, you up?" He typed back, "Yep." "Can I ask you something?" she wrote. "Ask," he replied. "Why did you ask me?" Her bubble arrived and hovered like a hesitant bird. "Why didn't you just pretend not to notice?" Coworker with the hollow laugh. And the answers would carve a road through the ordinary, a way out for someone each time. Weeks passed. The tremor in Elena's hands didn't return, not like before. When Adam and Mina stopped by the store, sometimes Elena was there, sometimes not. Once, Adam found her stocking shelves with a focus that made everything efficient. Another time, she was behind the register, telling a joke under her breath that made the line move faster. The hospital had set her mother up with a cardiologist and a plan. The plan was a ladder made of small rungs: medication, diet, follow-ups, a community nurse who visited on Tuesdays and said kind things that didn't cost anything. Money was still a cliff, but it had a railing now. The manager had remembered he was human. He gave Elena 2 afternoons off a week to take her mom to appointments. When Adam thanked him with a nod one day, the manager pretended to be busy with a stapler, but he smiled in a way that meant yes, I did that. On a rainy Saturday, Elena knocked on Adam's apartment door. She stood in the hallway, damp hair clinging to her cheeks, clutching a paper bag like she was offering a fragile animal. Mina barreled into the doorway and then stopped, shy, without her backpack armor. "I brought something," Elena said. "It's not much. Just cinnamon rolls. My mom's recipe. She said to tell you that kindness makes the heart remember how to be brave." They ate the rolls at the table by the window. The apartment smelled like warm sugar and rain. Elena's story unfolded in ordinary sentences that carried heavy things. Her father had left when she was 12, a vanishing act that taught her to check the door twice. Her mother had worked 2 jobs and still managed to make holidays feel like holidays. The tremor in Elena's hands had started after a car accident a year ago, not from injury but from the way near-miss trauma sits in the body like a clock you didn't set. The day in the store had been a perfect storm: too little sleep, too much fear, and the kind of loneliness that makes your skin feel loose. "I didn't think anyone would notice," she said. "Or if they did, I thought they'd be annoyed. People get mad when you slow them down." "People also get kind," Adam said. "Sometimes they're the same people." Elena's eyes moved around the apartment, the plant struggling on the windowsill, the tower of library books on the floor, the drawing Mina had taped crookedly to the fridge. "You have a good home," she said. "It's messy," Adam said. "But yeah. It's good." Mina returned to show a sticker she'd saved from the gum that day, a cartoon puppy holding a sign that read "You got this." She pressed it onto Elena's palm and giggled when it stuck slightly. Elena laughed too, and the sound filled the room in a way that felt like home arriving from somewhere far. He watched his reflection in the glass, older than he felt on good days, younger than he felt on bad ones. He thought of the way loneliness can hide in plain sight, how it waved at him every time he crossed a crowded street. He thought of a night long ago in a grocery store when his hands had trembled over toothpaste and the cashier had looked at his shaking and looked away. He thought of the promise he'd made to himself without putting words to it, to be the kind of person who interrupts other people's falling, not with instructions, just with presence. He typed, because I've needed someone to ask me before. And because sometimes the difference between holding on and letting go is whether anyone sees you. There was a long pause. Then, that changed everything. He didn't know what to say to that, so he sent a picture Mina had drawn, a puppy holding a sign. "You got this." Elena replied with a laughing emoji and a photo of her mother holding a plate of cinnamon rolls, a queen with a baker's crown. Months later, when life had doled out its usual mix of setbacks and small wins, something bigger happened. The store announced that the chain was closing their location. Numbers again. The manager gathered the staff near the coffee machine and read the email like a weather report you can't argue with. There were severance packages the size of polite apologies. People cried, cursed, called spouses. Elena stood very still. Adam heard the news from a neighbor who heard it from someone in line. He walked straight to the store. The shelves looked normal, but the air was different, like a party after someone has said something that can't be unsaid. Elena was at the register, ringing up items that would soon belong to a different address. "I don't want to start over," she said when Adam reached the counter. Her hands were steady, but her eyes had the glazed look of a person bracing for impact. "I'm tired of starting." "You're not," he said, and he meant both that she wasn't alone and that she wasn't tired at the core of who she was. "You're continuing. That's harder and somehow easier." The next weeks were a flurry. Adam helped Elena write a resume, then a better one. They practiced interview questions in his living room while Mina demonstrated the art of a confident handshake with solemn enthusiasm. The manager wrote references that read like love letters disguised as bullet points. Community has a way of revealing itself when threatened. Customers showed up with homemade coffee and job leads and the kind of advice that can only be given face-to-face, where accountability keeps it gentle. Elena interviewed at a small cafe owned by a woman named Priya, who had built the business one cup at a time. The interview wasn't perfect. Elena's voice trembled once when asked about a time she solved a problem, but she told the truth, and her truth was made of effort and endurance. Priya hired her on the spot. Anyone who can keep a line moving with a broken scanner and... "I'll cover the next hour of her register if you want," he added, and then, before he could think better of it, "I used to cashier in college." The manager rubbed his eyes. Managers are people. People have moms. He looked at the line, and at Elena's hands, and at the clock that had been the boss all day. "Fine," he said, trying to sound like he wasn't doing a kind thing. "But I need someone back here in 15 minutes. "I'll be back," Adam said, and then, to Elena, "Go." She stared at him like he'd handed her a door. "I don't even know you." "I'm Adam," he said. "This is Mina. We live 3 blocks over. We're not very interesting, but we have a car." She laughed, a small, astonished sound. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you." Elena grabbed her bag. The tremor didn't stop, but it changed, like a river deepening instead of scattering. She left the store in a blur of motion and gratitude, the bell above the door ringing with a life-sized urgency. Adam slid behind the register, and the other cashier showed him the keys like a magician revealing a trick. Mina stood at the end of the counter, proud and serious, handing people their change like it was a medal. For an hour, Adam beeped and bagged and smiled and apologized for being slow. For an hour, the world felt like a small, oddly shaped team, strangers deciding to be a little kinder because someone had asked a question and then listened to the answer. When the hour was up, Adam told the manager he had to get dinner started. The manager nodded, less gruff now, as if kindness had lowered his blood pressure. Adam bought their groceries, declined the employee discount the other cashier offered with a grin, and walked Mina to the car. "Do you think she'll be okay?" Mina asked as they buckled in. "I don't know," Adam said, because he had promised himself that with Mina, truth would always outrun comfort. "But I know we helped her get where she needs to be. Sometimes that's the part we get." On the drive home, the sky stretched itself into pinks and violets, the day exhaling. They ate pasta at the small table by the window, and Adam's phone buzzed once, then again, numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them at first. When Mina was in pajamas and the dishes were rinsed, he checked the messages, from an unknown number. "It's Elena. Mom is stable. They're running tests. I made it for the last 15 minutes of visiting hours." I held her hand. "Thank you." Then, after a pause, another, my hand stopped shaking. Adam closed his eyes. Sometimes relief arrives like sunlight. Sometimes it arrives like a lamp turned on in a small room. He typed back, "I'm glad. Keep us posted if you want. We're neighbors, after all." He set the phone down and watched Mina draw a puppy on her homework margin. He felt the day inside him, a new thread sewn into old fabric. He didn't know it yet, but the question he'd asked would become a habit, a small ritual of noticing. He would ask his barista, the crossing guard, his. Might have been much worse. A single dad asked a cashier why her hands were shaking, and her reply, raw and real, left him steadier than before. Because when you listen to someone else's fear, it teaches your own heart how to be less afraid. Because when you say, "I see you," the world, stubborn as it is, sometimes says it back.